Josh Stone, Cyndi Lauper, Maroon 5. They are all using this on tour. We've got a Apple Music's broadcast facility in Culver City is using this, not only for their shows, in their radio shows, but they also have a content creation thing. They're using it. We have it on Broadway at the Phantom Experience is using it. So this is deployed. It is in the market. It is being used. It is shipping now. We do have a lot of orders in the system already, so we're running about a 16 lead time. But you guys are here to learn about the system, so let's talk about it. So this is Spectera. It is the first truly bidirectional WMAS. And when I say WMAS, there are other companies out there that are claiming that they have a WMAS product. I mean, I guess they're using a wideband carrier and they're cramming a bunch of narrowband channels in it, but it is not truly what we envision WMAS to be. And I'll explain that a little bit more later. So this one RU rack system is capable of 64 audio channels, 32 in, 32 out. If you're doing stereo IEMs, that 32 becomes 16, right? We will have, and I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'm not gonna get too much in it. The ecosystem is relatively small right now. We have the base station, we have special antennas, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the antennas. We have a new SEK body pack. We are feverishly developing a handheld for it. We had 5 prototype handhelds at IBC. 2 of those are now in the United States making their rounds. The challenge with the handheld is figuring out how to mass produce it to make it as stable and as rugged and as durable as Sennheiser demands. So we're working on that. And then obviously we have new software because this system does what no other system is capable of doing currently and doing it extremely, extremely well. So that's the ecosystem. So when our engineers started down this road, I'll be honest, they actually started in, I think it's like 2018 when we launched our D9000 wireless system, which was a digital wireless system, and they realized all the problems that we have with analog carried over to digital. And they literally had a whiteboard and they just started writing all the problems that you have with narrowband. The spectrum's crowded. It's a lot of equipment. RF coordination is a real pain in the butt. Not only that, it's like even though you do put all this time and energy into RF coordination, something goes wrong and now your RF coordination is no longer good and you've got to change it. The other thing too, cable management. I mean, you're talking about antenna distribution, and that's a lot of BNC cables, and BNC is not easy to work with and it's expensive. And again, if you've got an antenna like this antenna, one of my antennas right here, I could run a 3-foot cable from that antenna to the base station, but if that antenna was 100 feet away, I can't use a 3-foot cable. I've got to have matching length cables, and then I may have to have boosters and all that stuff. All of that is, all these things they started looking at. They also did a lot of RF analysis of live productions to see in designing it how we could do it. So that's how we came up with Spectera. So it is continuously bidirectional, and it's not just an IEM and a microphone at the same time in the same pack, right? Which has never been done before. But this pack is also providing information and telemetry back to the base station, which you will have access to. Like it'll tell you, hey, I'm picking up RF interference, and you'll be able to see that in the software. And again, I mentioned it's a digital mic and a digital IFB all in the same time, and that digital mic can also be an instrument line. So,
taking questions, or do you want to wait until you're done?
No, if you have questions.
Just curious, can we use other mics with this, or is there something about your mic that enhances the capability?
Nope, it's a 3-pin LEMO. Okay. So any 3-pin LEMO microphone or instrument line can plug in here. If you had an adapter that goes, if you had a lavalier that's a 3.5 or a TA4F or whatever Shure's, is it TA4F? Yeah. By the way, I'm not an engineer. I'm a sales guy. So I do know a lot about this system. So if you have a question I can't answer, I will definitely make note of it and we will make sure we get you the answer. But you could use an adapter. So it doesn't have to be anything. We have noticed that with some early, like some of our earlier lavaliers, not our newer lavaliers, because we do have some people that have an inventory of lavaliers. Some of the shielding on that was not great because it was really designed to work in an analog system. And even with digital systems, they're not always the best. We did find that there was a little bit of noise. So if you have a newer lavalier or a lavalier that's got some good shielding, that'll be better. Even on like our current instrument line. So this is one of our current instrument lines that was designed to work with our EWDX system. This actually has a little bit of noise from Spectera. So we're actually coming out with a new one that has better shielding. There is one on the market currently from Fisher Amps that works great. Just has better shielding, so we're redesigning it. So yeah. So the first time, and I'll hand this pack around so you guys can take a look at it. You would think that if we were cramming both a microphone and an IEM into the same pack, it would be larger. This is literally the size of our EWDX. It's actually a little smaller than the size of one of our EWDX or EWD body packs. And if you compare it to an Axient body pack, I think it's actually still smaller than that. So taking a look. Good question. Why does my mouse? So since we're handing the pack around, we can talk about it. So it's got an antenna port. I'll get to the battery life in a second. Your 3-pin microphone or instrument line, and then your IEM IFB 3.5 millimeter connection. There is an endless encoder, a digital encoder. It is a push button. If you push the button, it'll cycle through the battery percentage. If the microphone is activated, it'll tell you the mic line, and then back to the name. And then the volume, it's an infinite encoder. So we had to do that because of the different functionality that this pack may not have now, but we can build into it later. So for instance, we're coming out with engineer mode. So an audio engineer could have his own pack. He could flip through all the audio channels on his pack and hear what they're hearing to make it easy. Exactly. So we do have I have the UHF system here. This base station is capable of doing the 1G4 spectrum, which is managed by an organization called AFTRAC. The base stations is capable of UHF and 1G4. For 1G4, you would need a different pack and you would need different antennas, but it looks relatively the same. You can use the IM or the IFB individually or together at the same time. It's not an either or. Battery life. So the battery that we use for this, we learned during COVID that having bespoke batteries for like a different battery for our D6000 series, which the handheld has a different battery than the pack, compared to our 6212 micro pack is a different battery. We learned that it didn't make sense logistically. So we are trying to standardize on our BA70 battery, which is the battery that we use in our EWD and EWDX system. It's a $50 battery. To answer your question, there's a wide range of battery life. It's anywhere from 4 hours to about 8 hours with the current battery, because are you using it as an IEM, or are you using it for a microphone? Are you using it for both? The headphone jack in here is an impedance matching, very powerful headphone amp. Like I have a pair of our HD20s. Give me 1 second. Should have audio playing, which I do. This is Adam. Minimum volume, maximum volume. I'm going to let this go. You guys are getting a little bit of a preview. But if I were to crank this up, that'll hurt someone's ears. So if someone had a 17 driver Jerry Harvey IEM system that would normally require an external amp to power it, you don't need that with this. This will power it. So going back to battery life, if the musician's deaf or he's got a 17 driver or both, and he's got to crank it up, that's going to use the battery faster. Okay?
I have a question about
the
commands on this. Can you disable the button if you are going to hand this over to a talent and you don't want them to be fiddling with it?
So I'll get into the software a little bit later, but yes. So you saw me change the audio limits. So we have a minimum and a maximum limit. So if you set those exactly at the same, that prevents them from being able to change the volume. You can give them a range. One of the most important things about this is this has absolutely no noise floor. So when you think about standard IEM systems where you hear that and it causes ear fatigue, this doesn't have that. So when we've demoed this in trade shows, people are like, it's not on, I don't hear anything. You could set the minimum volume to be at a level to whatever you're sending to that audio channel. It's always there. So they hear it, oh, okay, I hear the audio track, or I hear something going. So they know that it's on, and they don't know that. Because we've had people that have been like, oh, and with the infinite encoder, you know, if I turn this all the way down, they're used to like, oh, from 0 to 100, I don't hear anything. Well, no, you got to crank it up higher, right? So the faster you turn that infinite encoder, the faster the volume goes up. So we also have e-ink displays. So if you had the pack that was being handed around, oh, put it up there. I think I saw someone pull the battery out. I don't know if you can see it from here, but if I pull the battery out, the display stays on, or it shows what it was on its last state. So you could name it, change whatever you want to in there. So if you had talent, you want to name it for the talent, or you could put whatever information you want on there, and you just update it from the software and it pushes it right to the pack.
There's no adapter or anything for out the line. Someone forgot to charge it.
Unfortunately, no. So with AA batteries, we find that they just drain way too fast. So the BA70 battery is currently what we're using. We are actually, I believe January, we are going to have a new BA70 battery, which will have 30% more capacity. So when I said it's like 4 to 8, it now takes you to like 5 to 10 hours of battery life.
Is it BA70 off the shelf or proprietary?
It's a Sennheiser proprietary battery. So, any questions about the pack so far?
Mine was more relevant to the web GUI, which I'm assuming.
Sure. We'll get to that in a minute.
And so it's a single antenna for both receiving and transmitting.
So the system can use one antenna for both transmitting and receiving, for both microphone and IEM. And that one antenna is actually like 30 times diversity compared to your standard 2 antenna. Because the other thing, and I'm kind of getting ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Reflection actually helps the system. Where reflection normally hurts a standard wireless system, reflection actually helps. And I've got a story for that. But let's talk about, you know, a 1 RU system that does 32 by 32. So one of the things that they talked about was all this equipment that you got to haul around. So traditionally, if you had 64 channels of microphones and IEMs, you know, you're looking at all your rack is going to look something like this. You've got your individual microphones, you've got your IEMs, you've got your antenna distribution, you've got your antennas, then you got all your packs. Now with Spectera, it's this. 1 RU, same, and granted, we're going to be coming out with these. These aren't out there yet. But it dramatically reduces the architecture. I was actually talking to some transportation people, and I thought they were going to hate the fact that, you know, I can charge more for hauling this around. They were like, no, I love this. We love this because this is a lot less to insure than that. Plus, they always find that a production, they've got 2 trucks worth of stuff, but they've got a 1 truck budget. Well, now I can potentially, this is less stuff I got to haul around. So now I could potentially get them into 1 truck. And that 1 truck budget makes me more money because I'm now charging them 1 truck budget for a 1 truck versus trying to figure out how I fit, you know, 2 trucks. So new architecture. Now, no longer do we have analog connect. I'm getting ahead a little bit too on the base station. Let me back up a second. So how are we doing this? How are we doing IM and microphone at the same time, you know, in a single base station, in a single pack? Magic. So let's talk about how we're doing it. Oops. I'm having a hard time hitting buttons. Okay. So traditionally, when you look at your standard narrowband carriers, you've got your individual carriers that are assigned its very specific frequency, and it's using that frequency at this, you know, all the time. Okay, and you've got your different antenna distribution. You could see how like your intermodulation or your fading could affect it, how it could wipe out some signals. So what we're doing is we're using a 6 megahertz carrier, and that 6 megahertz carrier is now divided up into hundreds of subcarriers. And each pack is using that 6 megahertz carrier, all those subcarriers at the same time. So this is using the entire 6 megahertz. But this pack is going to use that same 6 megahertz, but they're using it at different times. So we're using time division multiplexing, TDMA, to assign time slots to these packs. It happens so fast that it's imperceptible and the audio quality is amazing. So what this is showing is how that 6 megahertz is flipping through all the time slots of these individual carriers. Now, if you have a huge dropout, you're not impacted because you have all the additional bandwidth to carry the data across. Now, our engineers, when they were designing the system, they were doing a tremendous amount of spectrum analysis at live shows, and they saw that it was very common to have a 2 megahertz drop. So if you had a WMAS system that was using a 3 megahertz carrier or a 4 megahertz carrier, and you had a 2 megahertz drop, that's going to wipe out anywhere from 2/3 to half your carrier, which is going to impact your performance. If you have a 6 megahertz carrier, you've got 2/3 of your carrier still left to get all the data across, and it's plenty. That's why we specifically chose a 6 megahertz carrier. Now, the other thing that happens with narrowband, when you have all your individual narrowband carriers, and let's just use 50 milliwatts as a transmission because it's easy math. If I've got one, it's 50 milliwatts, right? If I had a second, I'm now kind of compounding. Now it's like a 100 milliwatt transmission, and so on to where it's 100, 150, 200, and your noise floor starts to increase as well. What we're doing is we're taking all of that power and we're spreading it out over the 6 megahertz. So we're actually frequency polite. We're not really increasing the noise floor. Now, granted, it's a 6 megahertz carrier that's using 100 milliwatts at its highest power. You could use 10 if you want, or 20 or 30 or 50 or 100. But it's spread out, so it's more frequency polite. So if I'm adding more packs, I'm not having to take that 100 milliwatts and divide it by the number of packs. This pack, because it's using the entire 6 megahertz carrier at its time slot, is using the full power. Now, this pack is limited to 50 milliwatts, where the base station and antennas are able to transmit at 100 milliwatts. So this is using all 50 when it needs to use all 50, and this is using all 50. So one of our competitors just released a firmware update which expands their WMAS system. I'm streaming this, so I got to be careful what I say so I don't I'm not pissing anyone off. But their power output on their base station was 200 milliwatts, and they were doing, 4 stereo, which took it down to 50 milliwatts. But now with their firmware, you could go to 8, where that 50 now becomes like 20. And if you want to take and go to 16, you're stuck at 10, which now dramatically impacts the range that you have, where it doesn't matter with us because no matter how many packs you have, they're using the full power during its time slot.
Is that also how you guys able to get the transmitter and receiver in together physically so close?
Yeah, so technically you're assigning your audio channels time slots.
So they're actually swapped.
Yeah, so the IEM on this is using different time slots than the microphone. So it doesn't matter, it's just which.
Yeah.
So that's how we're doing it. The other thing, so this gives you a lot more flexibility. One of the things that we learned is, well, now I'm using time slots. Okay, what can I do with those? If I'm assigning time slots, what if we made it to where you could then start to choose the audio quality or your latency? So when you buy our EWDX system or our D6000 system, or even Axient for that matter, the audio quality is the audio quality and the latency is the latency. But what if you can say, okay, I want better audio quality, but I want lower latency? You can choose a link mode that can do that for you. It might affect the number of packs or audio channels that you can have in your carrier, but if it fits within what you're trying to do, it works. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. I'm just, you know what? I actually have it already open. So we have link modes. So the link mode's up top. These are our microphone link modes. So we have two PCM 24-bit lossless link modes. You can have 8 of them in a 6 megahertz carrier at 1 milliseconds of latency. Nobody's doing that. If you want to double your count, if you need 16 microphones, well, great. You got to do 1.6 milliseconds of latency. Is anyone going to notice the difference between 1 and 1.6? No. If you wanted to, now this gives you reduced antenna coverage because of the data, how we're transmitting the data. But if you needed to, I need more range. Well, you could still do 1 millisecond with 8, but you're going to have to go down to our Sennheiser digital audio codec. That Sennheiser digital audio codec is the same codec that we use for D6000. And a lot of people think that D6000 is still the best sounding wireless microphones out on the market. Now, the funny thing about this is when we were getting ready to do Spectera, the engineers went in and they fiddled with the codec. So it's actually better than D6000. So you can have better than D6000 audio quality at 1 millisecond of latency. Yes?
So is this GUI that will allow me to tailor what I want and that goes into the unit, or this is just for calculation?
So Soundbase is a brand agnostic RF coordination software. They built this tool for us. So this tool actually allows you, it's a Spectera calculating tool. You can actually start using this to plan out what link modes you want to use.
So you can have a voice of God and a few talent mics and
Yeah.
a couple of IMs, and so you play with them until you get what you want.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, let's talk about the microphones. Let's talk about the microphones for a second. So let's say Beyonce is going to be using one of the microphones. Well, she wants 1 millisecond, PCM lossless, 24-bit. Great, you can set her device to that, but let's say her backup singers, they don't need that. So you can go, great, you're going to be, just so I have more resources in my 6 megahertz carrier, you guys are going to have 1.6, you're going to use the Sennheiser digital audio codec, you're fine. So you can pick and choose per pack, and I'll show you that when we get into the software. You can pick and choose. Each pack can be different. The microphone and the IEMs can be unique and different. So you're setting your link mode for your microphone, and you're setting your link mode for your IEM IFB. Now, we also have mono and stereo IFB link modes. I like talking about the stereo because it's really cool. So if you want, like literally, again, all of it is the CDEC codec, which is really good. If you've heard our D6000 microphones, you know it's good. A digital stereo IEM with no noise floor at 0.7 milliseconds of latency. Nobody's doing that. One of our competitors that came out with their WMAS IEM system, they're at 2.9, if not higher. It's not. I think it's even higher than that, and the audio quality is not great. Well, and yeah, don't get me wrong. This is just one way. So if you're using the 1 millisecond of latency on the microphone, and then those zero, so you're at 1.7. But then if you're going through Dante, that's half a millisecond, and then if you've got your whole other audio chain, adds another. But again, just to give you a point of reference, I'm going to go back up to the microphones. This live link density mode, where you can have 32 microphones in a 6 megahertz carrier, utilizing our better than D6000 audio codec at 2.7 milliseconds of latency, D6000 considered the best sounding microphone that Beyonce, Pink, I'm trying to think of some of the other audiences that perform. Who? Taylor? No, she's on Axient now, I think. Sorry. 2.7 milliseconds. D6000 is 2.9 milliseconds. So you've got lower latency, better audio quality, 32 microphones in a 6 megahertz carrier in a 1 RU rack system, right?
You can always get a second rack unit if that becomes a critical issue, and have half of your devices in one and half in the other.
Yep. Now, kind of getting ahead. So the I/O limitation on the, so there's a little bit of trickiness here. So we said it's one base station is 64 audio channels, 32 in, 32 out. We will have the ability, and I'm getting ahead, you'll be able to daisy chain these. So now you could start compounding the I/O. So 2 base stations is now 64 by 64. 3 base stations is 96 by 96. You could daisy chain up to 8, but the maximum is 128. So if you notice, we have on the microphone, we have a maximum link density of 128 because that's the number of time slots that you have. So that's the most you could have in a 6 megahertz carrier. Now you're at 15.2. You would never use 15.2 for live performance, but back of house, the frame rate on cameras is more than 15.2. So you could use this for broadcast. If you were doing a reality TV show where you had a boatload of people, you could have all of them with a pack.
A lot of, I mean, the most important latency is for monitoring and for talent. You can have 15 milliwatts for a client, they're never going to know anyway.
The comms, I mean.
For comms, yeah, exactly.
Right. So, and then again, we have mono mode where we have two different codecs. So Opus codec is a codec that we had purchased. It is a really good codec. It's not as good as our Sennheiser codec, and it's not as good as PCM, but it is very good. But again, 9.9, perfect for broadcast, perfect for back of house. You wouldn't use it for live, okay? So now you have the ability to kind of mix and match. This calculator, it's online right now. You can go to soundbase.app. By the way, Soundbase has a free, you could use Soundbase right now. It's free to do your RF coordination. There is a paid version that allows you to monitor and control equipment. And it's Sennheiser, Shure, Electrosonic, Wizzycom, all your big players. Spectera will actually be integrated into this, so you will be able to use Soundbase as one of your software options, and I'll get into that later. Okay, so let me just jump back to the presentation. So that's what we mean by link mode. So this gives you flexibility. So Schwinn was telling us about a church project that he was working on, which is really kind of cool because, and I'll tell you another story too. For a church, you could set this up at a church to where, their weekly service is, we've got, 8 microphones. So they have 8 packs or whatever that they're using. But Christmas and Easter rolls around, they're doing a huge pageant where they're doubling, tripling the number. Well, they don't need to go rent additional base stations. They don't need to go rent additional antennas. They have to go rent additional packs or buy additional packs. But all they have to do is potentially go in and change their link mode and then squeeze it in. Or, and I'm getting ahead, the base station is capable of doing 2 RF carriers. So even though you might have maxed out the capability of one of your RF carriers, you haven't maxed out the I/O of the base station, you could activate the second RF carrier, have packs on that to where you now are maxing out the I/O of the base station. So you've got your RF carrier limitations and you've got your I/O on the base station limitations, but you also have the time slot limitations. So I was talking to the monitor engineer for the Eagles when they were doing their residency at the Sphere. First off, on their stage, they have 2 antennas, and they had to tape out on the stage like a 10-foot radius, and they told the Don Welsh and Joe Henley, those guys, Joe Walsh and Don Henley, you go beyond that tape, you're going to lose your ears because that's as far as they can get. The Sphere is a giant Faraday cage with all kinds of reflection. And then you have the interference of the video screen. And then you also have the T-Mobile cellular repeater under the stage, which also causes interference. We set up Spectera with 2 antennas on the stage, perfect reception all the way to the very back row, the very top back row of the Sphere with no problem. One of the guys walked through on the floor, walked through one of the concrete tunnels. He had reception all the way to the end of the tunnel until he turned right, which he's now behind, hundreds of feet of concrete. We took 2 antennas, set it up at the front of the house at a different time. Same coverage all the way behind them, coverage all the way down to the stage. They couldn't get really behind the stage, but we have answers to that. So, but in talking to the RF engineer, he goes, well, with redundancy, what we would do is we'd have 2 base stations. We'd put half of them on one, half of them on the other. If one of the base stations went out, we'd just move them onto one base station because I could just change the link modes. They even said they would never know the difference between the latency or the audio quality because the audio quality between the different link modes would be the same. But they're like, yeah, going from 1 to 1.6, they'd never notice the latency. There might be a little downtime between moving the packs, but he goes, it's built in. It's cool. Any questions so far? I've kind of gone over how we're doing it in the link modes.
How many antenna outputs are there?
4. I'll get into, and by the way, you guys can come up. We can do walk tests so you can hear the audio quality. You can see what kind of range we get with 2 antennas here. You can play with it. You can ask any questions and all that stuff.
So you could do quad diversity like you would have on the ANX4.
Technically, one of our antennas is way more diversity than the ANX4.
Okay.
Because one antenna is 30 times diversity versus dual or quad diversity.
Okay.
So quad diversity is 4 times diversity. So 30 times there. I don't even know if there's a word for 30 times.
How do you get? I don't understand how that can work for one antenna. I mean,
I'm also not
you
following
just delay the input. Is that how it's done? How do you get? Because the diversity thing, because it's space, right? So how do you get space to?
Well, diversity with standard narrowband is you have 2 antennas that are now kind of getting the reception, and then the base station has to do, or the receiver has to determine which is the best signal, and then I'm going to use that one. So then if you have 4 antennas, quad diversity, you now have 4 antennas picking up. This just picks it all up. And it doesn't matter, there's no interference.
But if you put 2 diversity antennas together, then it's no longer diversity. It's just one, because in space it's one thing. So you're never going to have one stronger than the other, because they're right beside each other.
Correct.
I mean, anyways, I just don't. So
Right.
I think
it doesn't matter.
I think
Well-
it's using the word diversity in terms of how much augmented quality reception is. It's
So
like there's several.
If you think about this, when you have 2 antennas on a narrowband frequency, what's happening is your RF carrier for, let's say, one of your narrowband carriers is getting picked up by both antennas, and sometimes they're at different times, thus the intermodulation. So the base station's trying to figure out which is the antenna that we want to pick up that antenna and ignore the other one. So if you have 4, you now have 4 antennas that are picking up the thing, and it's trying to figure out which is the signal to use. This doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times it picks up the signal. It just picks it up and reads it. That's diversity is now giving you antenna coverage to be able to determine which signal is your better signal and which one's the stronger signal to use, right? That's the antenna diversity that you need with narrowband. Because if
keep it in the pool for me, maybe I don't really.
But
understand
if you had one antenna with a narrowband carrier and it got 2 signals at slightly the different time, it's going to just ignore both of them. Because it doesn't know which one. That's why you have 2 antennas to be able to do. This doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times the signal gets picked up, because it's only a matter of its time slot.
You said there's only 4 outputs for antennas.
Correct.
Let's say I'm trying to cover a large area and I need more antennas. Is there an option for that?
So you know how I said you'll be able to daisy chain base stations and you'll be able to increase. So when you daisy chain base stations, you're now daisy chaining the antenna ports. So with 8 base stations, you could have up to 32 antennas.
And does it only work with these Sennheiser antennas, or we could use any fins we have?
So getting a little bit ahead,
Okay.
Because I'm going to dive into the antennas and what are different. But yes, these are specific Spectera antennas. You can't use any antenna, and I'll explain why in a second. Okay, so I kind of touched on some of the software. We do have a PC-based, whether Mac and OS software called LinkDesk. We also have our Spectera web GUI. Interesting story about software. So we had a software team that was developing LinkDesk, and they were taking too long. So these hardware engineers learned on the weekend how to program HTML, and they wrote their own software so they could keep developing the hardware because the software was taking too long. This got so good that we decided to include it in the firmware. So it's obviously, by the way, no charge for either of these. You could download LinkDesk right now today. The web GUI, you just open up a web browser, type in the IP address, put in your password, and you're up and running. There are some differences between these two. The LinkDesk, you can only have one user accessing it at a time, which if you had front of house and a monitor engineer person situation, or you had 2 people, one doing mics, they can't both access it. The web GUI, you could have unlimited number of people accessing the web GUI. One of the benefits about the web GUI is the workflow is much easier. All your information's right in front of you, and you'll see it because you'll be able to come up and play with it. Soundbase is coming. So again, free software. The paid version of Soundbase is what is required to be able to control hardware. So if you haven't, do any of you guys use Soundbase currently? Have any of you heard of Soundbase? So go to soundbase.app. It's free to get your free account. It's great for RF coordination. It makes it super easy. But with the paid version, you can then send your RF frequencies to your hardware. There's a monitoring portion of it to where, just like you would with wireless Workbench, you can monitor everything. You can change different stuff. And so it does all of that. What's great about Soundbase is they've worked and they've gotten the APIs from all the different manufacturers. So they know when you're doing your RF coordination, if you're using Shure, Axient, whatever, they know that this is the space you need between their channels and all that fun stuff. And you can intermix. So you can have, if you're doing a big project that's using Shure, WizEcom, Lectrosonic, and Sennheiser, you put it all in there. It will RF coordinate all of those frequencies for you. It's a really cool piece of software. So that's coming. That will actually, with the paid version, be able to actually control Spectera as well. They've actually done some really cool stuff. They actually designed a piece of software that turns the antenna into an RF coordinator. You could just plug the antenna right into your laptop and use it as a spectrum analyzer.
So upload scans, and if you're going to be shooting in an area you haven't been to, you could look if someone's uploaded a scan into that area, which is really cool. So I took an 8-hour class on this. It's by far the coolest RF coordination software I've seen.
Cloud-based, yeah. So I'm working with someone who's doing a project in Arizona. If anyone's ever tried to do RF coordination in Arizona, it's very complicated because it's a very crowded spectrum. So I opened up Soundbase, typed in the address that they were going to be doing it at. I looked to see what scans were done in the area. And I said, well, all right, that one's close. It's not going to be ideal, but it gives me an idea. And it was someone who uploaded it. So yeah, when you do a scan, you can upload your scans. You could download the scans.
All the information in terms of the antennas they were scanning with, the wireless system. It's users can vote on the accuracy of the scans. It's really cool.
Yep.
And it'll let you back to your.
I can show you guys Soundbase afterwards if you guys want as well. Okay.
So, sorry, quickly, Glenn.
Yeah.
So you're saying that if I'm doing a location scout, I can just take my laptop and the antenna?
No.
No.
They developed the software, they haven't released it. There's a little bit of internal struggle between the software engineers and the Soundbase people because they've done some really cool stuff. And our guys, stop making us look bad. So, but anyways, LinkDesk. LinkDesk is really cool. So one of the things you can do with both software, but LinkDesk does this one thing better. This is probably one of the things that I would say if you need this functionality, use LinkDesk. So you can, when you set up a system, you set up all your packs, you assign them the link modes, you name them, you set all these different parameters. You can now save that. Then you could start a new production, set it all up, save that. But let's say you want to bring up the other one. You just load in that production. The system then sends all that information to the packs. So a great example of why you would use this is, let's say you're doing a music festival. You've got a stage and you've got 4 or 5 acts that are coming on, right? So you could set up each act or each band and save their production. So when they're coming off, you just go load in the next band. It sets the packs. You give the packs to the new band, they're off and running. Or if you want, you could have 2 sets of packs. So the first band's on. The second band already has their packs. You just load in the production. It activates their packs. This band comes off. You can take their packs off. You could throw these in a charging cradle to charge them up between acts. So then when that second band's done, those packs that were on the first band go onto the third band. You just load in the third production, programs them the way they need to be. Kind of cool. It's like lighting scenes. LinkDesk does that a little bit better than the web GUI. But as we improve the firmware and make software changes, that gets updated. And all those firmware stuff, that's all free. We don't charge for that. As we release additional functionality, we don't charge for it. When you buy it, you own it, full capabilities. I'm not going to get into this because I think it's easier to show you guys the software. So some of the other stuff, continuous interference management, remote control, digital antennas. Okay, so we were talking, you guys had questions about the antennas. So we've done something different. This box right here, this is the RF module. We've moved the RF out of the base station, we moved it into the antenna. So this cable is now a category cable. It's not a BNC cable. Very cheap. Cat 5e. This is just an Amazon probably a $10 cable. Plug it in, you're off and running. You are now sending ones and zeros. It's not RF over the cable, it's ones and zeros. So this can be a 328 foot, that's the longest category cable you can use. So that's a home run from the antenna to the base station. It gets PoE over the Cat5. If 328 feet is not long enough, you can use a layer 1 media converter and convert to fiber and go 4 kilometers.
There's no signal loss because it's not SDI.
Correct. It's ones and zeros. So why would you need 4 kilometers? Well, suppose you're Cynthia Erivo opening the Tonys and you're doing this big old crazy walk from your dressing room, down 2 flights of stairs, down a long hallway, down another 2 flights of stairs, down another hallway, stopping to Oprah along the way, going out onto the stage and doing a performance. 328 feet is not going to be enough from where the base station is to where these antennas are going to be. And by the way, that was all done with Spectera. 4 antennas along the way, and she just walked. One of our competitors had this great idea. Oh, well, what we're going to do is we're going to manually move her pack from different antenna networks. And it's like, no, you just use Spectera, have it walk the whole way. I mentioned power over Ethernet. It is a category cable. The connectors are Ethercon, so that does give you some. They're built to be IP54 rated. We have not actually gone through the process of rating them because it is very expensive and we want to keep our costs down. I figure if Sennheiser tells you that we built this to be IP54 rated, I think you guys would believe we built it to be IP54 rated.
You can also use a plastic bag.
You could always put a plastic bag over it. What else? Oh, a couple of our technical application engineers were in Florida during the middle of the summer. So they took one of these antennas that was connected and they also did one of the packs. They left it on the asphalt and they just let it bake in the sun to see what would happen. Got up to 140 degrees and it still worked. So yeah, pretty cool. We do have 2 different versions. I mentioned the base station is capable of doing UHF and 1G4. So you do need a different 1G4 antenna. The base station, as I said, can do 2 RF carriers. So one of them could be 1G4 and the other one could be UHF. They don't have to be both the same. You can have them both be separate. Any questions about the antennas?
Well, I'm curious. If I have those 2 antennas, does it matter that they're close or far away from each other?
We recommend 10 feet at least. I've had them set up on both ends of a desk, clamped, and they work. But yeah, I mean, we've taken like transmitters, narrowband transmitters, and touched the antennas, and it doesn't do anything to them. I have noticed when they are close together, if you're using, by the way, again, the software, just turn one of the antennas to an RF scanner and turns into an RF scanner. If this is too close to that's on an RF carrier, it gets an overload, but you can change the reference level and it'll be fine. Or you could just turn the antenna off and use it as an RF scanner. But if it's further apart, so yeah. And again, you can have up to 4. The system only needs 1. I could show you, I could pump music into the IEMs, or I've got a lavalier, so I could pump the lavalier back into the headphones, have it work off of 1 antenna, just so you guys can see. Even with 2 antennas running, if I were to unplug one of these, you wouldn't hear any drop in signal or any change because it's kind of using both antennas at the same time. It's just a matter of which one's giving the stronger signal. So those are the antennas. They're called DADs, Digital Antenna Device.
Is there a manual for these we can look up? I'm just curious. I don't feel like these function the same as the antennas I'm used to.
I mean, they don't because they don't use BNC and the RFs in them. We do have a manual online that you could look at. They do look like directional antennas, but because reflection helps, they actually almost function like an omni antenna.
Right. It's like I just feel like I'm not viewing how this functions the way it actually does, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it is still somewhat directional, but because reflections help this system, again, have you been to the Sphere?
I have not.
Okay, so if you've ever been to the Sphere, the front of the house is like on the 2nd row, and we had 2 antennas that were like 2 Digicom consoles apart. They were still getting signal all the way like 3 sections up above at the top, right? So they operate, because again, reflections help, they almost operate as an omni. So we've had people say, are you going to come out with Omni? And we don't have to. The biggest question we've had is are you going to come out with like an architecturally pleasing antenna that you could put on a wall of like a church, or so it doesn't look like a big black antenna? But yeah, antennas are not our priority of developing. Handheld, that's the first thing. Any other questions about the antenna? Oh, yeah.
I'm a little new to this, but let's say you have a high school theater production.
Uh-huh.
How many lights can you run off?
Well, technically 128, but currently with one base station, the most you could have, one base station, one antenna, 32. Because that's the maximum IO of the base station.
Do you just add base stations to the same antenna, or do you add antennas to base stations?
The cascade function's not open yet, but it will. But eventually, yes, you could have 8 base stations operating off of one antenna when the cascade function's open, or 32 antennas off of 8 base stations. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. For a high school, first off, we would never really recommend one antenna anyways, because you always want at least some redundancy. You also want some coverage potentially. So we'd always recommend 2 antennas just in case someone runs over or cuts your category cable. You don't want your production to shut down. So we would always recommend at least 2 antennas.
No matter how big the receiver, no matter how many receivers or how many base stations, you only need 1 or 2 antennas.
Correct. Because again, that 6 megahertz carrier is broken up into time slots. So each one is using that whole 6 megahertz carrier during its assigned time slots. Okay. So let's talk about the base station. I always feel like this is the one. The only analog connection on it is the headphone jack. So with the headphone jack, you could cycle through on the base station all the IAM channels. There is a very small LED display. You guys can take a look and see what's on there. Basically, it kind of shows you the 2 different RF carriers, what frequency they're on, what firmware you're running, what the IP address is. That's probably the most important bit of information I get off of that, is whenever I go to access the web GUI, is what IP address am I plugging into? Now, the back of it, we have 2 PSU units for full redundancy, right? If one goes out, you got the other one. Your 4 antenna ports, again, category cables. Now, you could have 1 on one RF carrier. You could have 3 on the second RF carrier. You could do 2 and 2. You could have 1 on one, 1 on the other, 1 as a full-time RF spectrum analyzer and leave the other one empty. However you want to assign these, and I'll show you how you can assign them. It's literally clicking a radio button in the software. Word clock. So I was told that our engineers got stupid crazy in developing the word clock on this. I was told that it's probably one of the most robust word clocks. So if you have this be your master clock, your other stuff might sound better, but it'll follow whatever clock you've got set with Dante. It'll just follow that. But if you want to have this be your primary clock, you can. We have separated the network control from Dante because someone may want to have the, because this is the web GUI, you could access it with your phone as long as you're on the network that you're controlling it on has a Wi-Fi connection, but you may not want your audio Dante network to be on that same Wi-Fi network. That's why we split it out, right? So again, redundant Dante. Now this is the Cascade ports. It is not operational and functional yet. I am told that our engineers are told by Q2 that the Cascade function, they want it to be operational to be able to cascade the antennas. So Q2, theoretically, we're supposed to be able to cascade the base stations to expand your IO on the antennas only, not the IO of the base stations. That's probably going to be in a later firmware. And then we have 2 card slots for MADI expansion. You can use MADI and Dante at the same time, and you could use them at different clock rates. So if Dante's at 48 and MADI's at 96, you can do that. You can use them both at the same time.
Just to clarify, it's AC and DC power?
Only AC.
Okay.
And I know a lot of you guys want DC for location sound.
Yes, that would be a deal breaker limitation for us.
Well, I know plenty of people that are using AC and they're just using an inverter, but in places where you don't have the, we get it. I understand. I would love to see it to where this is a module that you could pull out to where you could make it AC or DC, or it gives you both, but you might lose the redundancy of power.
Well, for us, sorry to interrupt, but for us, it's DC is our redundancy. Because a lot of us would have like, this one DC port that goes in, and then we could, because I have like a Furman in my part.
Right.
That's AC power. And both are simultaneous. So for me, if like, the PSU2 becomes a DC port, like a Vulcan XLR, that would actually be a big win. Think it's possible?
I don't see why it's not possible. Other people are doing it. I'll be honest, we are working on a new base station that'll have SMPTE 2110 because it'll have a new chipset. So we'll actually have a secondary base station at some point in time. But I don't see why we couldn't. I'm sure. So one of the cool things that we're doing differently. So as Germans, which I'm not German, but as Germans, as a German company, Germans go, well, we know how to. This is bad German accent. I'm going to stop doing that because this is being streamed. We know how to make stuff, and when we make it, it's made right. So, for instance, when we came out with D9000, it's like, here, it's perfect. And people are like, but can it do this, that, and the other thing? You're like, no, but you don't need it to do that. And like, no, yes, we do. Same thing with kind of D6000. It was like, it's perfect. Here you go. And it's like, but it needs to do this. So one of the things we're doing differently is we are taking feedback. We launched this knowing that it wasn't 100% ready for prime time. We knew that there was firmware that was going to be coming. Like we've already had 4 different firmware updates. We're going to have another one in January. That's part of it's going to be changing the display on the front of the packs and all that stuff.
Has the Spectra been out?
We started shipping in end of April. Yeah.
You have 4 updates already.
I think we've had 4 firmware updates, but it's a lot of it was like, for instance, we made some like some stuff was like, and I'll get into software stuff that changed, but a lot of the function it wasn't because something wasn't working right. It was enhancements that made it better. And I'll show you some of the enhancements.
It means, yeah.
Well,
you're always making it better.
But sometimes firmware is, oh, we found a bug, we're fixing it. Don't get me wrong, there have been some operational stuff. But, so the base station. Questions about the base station?
I guess there's no option maybe coming for pigtails for analog split. There's just a lot of touring acts that still insist on having an analog split.
So that's come up. So from the Dante port, there are boxes that you can purchase that you plug into the Dante port, which gives you your analog.
Yeah, I think Army makes a Matty one as well.
Yeah.
So you just need a third. Yeah.
We don't make it because it's already made. It'd be kind of silly for us to reinvent the wheel. So somebody's already made a good one. Don't know if we can make it better. We'd probably charge more.
I assume that receivers are rechargeable, and what's the runtime?
Do you mean the packs? Yeah. So well, technically they're transceivers because they transmit and receive. Rechargeable battery. They have contacts, so there's cradles that these can drop into. But these batteries do have chargers, but they only work off of rechargeable batteries, no AA's. The runtime varies, 4 to 8 hours. We are coming out with a higher capacity version of the battery that's 30% higher capacity, so we're looking at 5 to 10 hours of runtime on the new battery. Yeah.
With the battery being proprietary, is there to-the-minute telemetry, such as a competitor has?
So yes, it's a smart battery. So you'll be able to see how many charge cycles, it transmits battery percentages. You'll be able to see battery health and all that fun stuff.
Specifically, I'm asking, can I see to-the-minute battery life, not percentage?
It actually shows you time.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, scratch that. It shows percentage.
Okay.
The reason why I think we did percentage over time is because depending on how you use it, that time can vary.
Right, I get that. It's the current system I'm using.
Yeah.
Regardless of what I have it set to, it'll adjust to show me.
Yeah.
I have an hour 40.
Well, and don't get me wrong. If I change link modes, the percentage adjusts. I'm not sure if that's a firmware update to where they're going to show runtime.
Okay.
All our other batteries, all our other systems show time instead of percentage.
Right.
So, So some typical configurations. So if you wanted 8 mics, 8 stereo IEMs, 1 base station, 3 antennas. You don't need 3 antennas, but you could do 2. 8 packs. Each pack does a microphone and a lavalier. If you want to do 48 microphones, 48 stereo IEMs, 32 individual stereo mixes, 2 zones, and continuous scanning, that's what your architecture would look like. If you think about what this would look like compared to current narrowband, it's a huge rack of gear. The other thing too, the amount of power these 2 base stations are pulling compared to a giant rack, the amount of money, technically, this is even cheaper than narrowband. Like when we first came out with the pricing for this, I compared it to 6 channels of just our D6000 microphones. Compared to like this configuration with 2 antennas, it was thousands of dollars cheaper. And then as you scale it to larger and larger, it becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And that doesn't account for the fact that you also have the IEM capability already built in. Now, if I wanted to add IEMs, now I'm having to buy a whole new system. And then figure out the antennas, redo my RF coordination, and all that fun stuff.
Do you have a price point today as far as what these are selling for? You said you've been selling them
Sure.
for a while.
Yeah, so the base station is 10,000. The packs are 2,000. The antennas are 1,600. 1,600 each. We sell everything a la carte because this is so flexible. Some people might be like, I only need 2 antennas and I only need 8 packs and the base station. Some people are like, no, we need 2 base stations. We need 8 antennas. So we sell everything a la carte. The batteries, I already mentioned, the batteries are $50 compared to our competitors that range from 100 to 150.
Does it come with batteries?
It does not come with batteries. Theirs do.
How much are the chargers?
Depends on how you want to charge it. So just to give you an idea, so we sell this charge kit. Comes with 2 batteries, desktop charger. These just slide in, slide out. $150 for this. And I think this charges it in like 30 minutes. These charge really quick.
Can you do USB charging?
Yes, to USB-C. I've plugged this into my car's USB port, charged it on the road.
Do you have chargers that charge 8 or more batteries?
We have a rack mount,
Okay.
a 1RU rack mount. It's our L6000. It's actually got individual modules, kind of like our competitors,
Right.
depending on the battery you want to use. And it charges up to 8. Again, it's smart. It reads the telemetry, so it sends information
It's all
on the charge state.
the web app. Okay.
Yeah. We also have desktop cradles. So this will pop into a cradle. You can pull this out. That cradle it'll do the handheld, it'll do the pack, and it does individual batteries. So if you wanted to use the cradle to charge just the battery, you can do that as well.
Are there any plans for maybe a half rack size for 4-bay charger? Because one of my issues with a competing system is their battery chargers are either 2-bay or rack width, and there's nothing in the middle, and it's really hard to integrate in with all of them.
There is nothing on the roadmap that I'm aware of that's a kind of a half rack.
Okay.
The L6000 rack mount that we've had it for a very long time because it's been out for as long as we've had D6000, D9000.
It's
So-
great for front of house. It's hard because we have sub rack with curves.
Yep.
So, your caddy charger. How many can you charge at once?
Oh, the caddies you drop in. So each caddy is 2 bays, but you can daisy chain up to 5 of them. So you could do 10.
Oh, okay, wow.
2 bays. So again, 2 bays in each caddy, daisy chain 5 caddies, 2 times 5 is 10. That can also get PoE, so you don't have to use the power adapter. And that also sends telemetry of the battery state to different software that we have.
Do you have a caddy here today?
I don't have a caddy here today.
Yeah.
They probably sell the caddies here. I could probably pull up images of the caddy.
Because I'm thinking to myself like, since I know like R&D, blah blah, don't reinvent the wheel. Like you could put I don't know how tall the caddy is, but like put it in a drawer.
You could. We've actually seen people do that. The problem is when you think about the mics are pretty tall, and when you stick it in. But if you had a tall enough drawer,
No, I'm talking about like just for the packs, not the mic.
yeah.
Yeah.
And these antennas are removable, so if you wanted to make it even shorter. I think when you put it in the caddy, I think about this much sticks out. But I have seen people put those caddies in the drawer. I've actually seen people take these and they will like Velcro them and have them plugged into like a ferment in the back of this so they can just pop these out and almost make these rack mountable. They just, yeah, this is the desktop. So, cool. So stuff we have coming. Again, we released it earlier this year. It's the stuff I already mentioned. The first thing we're coming out with is the handheld. The current plan for the handheld to be available is August of next year. So we have working ones now. But again, getting it to where they can be mass produced is a different story. SMPTE 2110 for broadcast, that's coming. That's going to be a secondary base station. Basically, we just had to add a Z-Man chip to the base station. Command mode is actually going to come out actually before SMPTE 2110. So on the pack, the first command mode that we're going to have is an accessory that plugs in between the microphone or the lavalier in this to where it's like a little push button, kind of like the NFL referee. The microphone, when that comes out, that'll have a ring that can be attached between the stick and the capsule with a button, much like our D6000 command button. And then eventually, supposedly I'm told, we'll have software to where you could say that this push button is your command button, or this push button becomes a mute button, or you'll be able to, because this is a digital encoder, that will develop functionality that you can pick and choose how you want the digital encoder to work.
Does your software work with the tablet?
The web GUI does. The desktop software is only PC and Mac, or Windows and Mac.
Does the pack itself have party dialing?
No. I know that is a big thing for location.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know.
It's not applicable the way that the system works because it's off of time slots, not frequencies.
Oh.
It
See, I was late to this. I was late.
Yeah.
You probably mentioned that earlier.
I didn't mention party dialing, but I did mention how each pack is assigned a time slot, and each pack uses the entire 6 megahertz. So I've talked to a lot of location sound guys. Like, do you guys know Doc Justice?
Yes.
So I was talking, he and I had a lot of conversations about party dialing and how can we make that work? Because I even talked about, well, couldn't we do a half rack that has maybe 2 antenna ports and we combine Dante and the control port and maybe get rid of the MADI slots and make a half rack unit. But I submitted that as something we could work on. I don't see that coming.
I'm not even sure how that would work based off of how the WMAS system functions.
For a party dialing
Yeah,
is,
I mean,
trust me, I get it. It's like, we were talking.
What's cool with sound base is you could mimic that if you knew in advance what transmitters you need to swap over, and you had someone running that. You could set it up so that someone's manually doing it, but it wouldn't be party dialing. You'd be mimicking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
We're using Dante to determine which modes
There's workarounds that you could use with the system. It's just that the way that Spectera is built, it wouldn't be party dialing.
I mean, even in the software, and again, it's not party dialing. And again, you've got your bag guy and you got your camera guy, and he's doing his party dialing in the bag. I doubt this is going to be a proper solution, but we do have your audio I/O to where you could go, well, I need, that audio channel to be on, whichever pack you can, but I don't think that's going to work, because you could have it on a tablet or on your phone, but I don't think that's going to work for party dialing. But trust me, we get it. Let me be clear. We don't believe that this is going to replace narrowband. We are still developing narrowband products. This is just something that we saw as a solution that a lot of people can use. And a lot of people are very excited and happy that we're doing this. And a lot of people are seeing some really cool stuff that they can use this for. And the fact that you can use this in spectrum that is totally unusable for narrowband gets people excited.
Oh, no, this is crazy cool.
Yeah.
I just I guess I know, like for example, like the reason why power dialing is like kind of useful, is because like the person like what's the person wants a different feed, unless they have to communicate that privately to the front of house, saying, hey, change my feed to channel 4.
Command button.
Well,
Change my feed.
Yeah.
That's where Soundbase will come in.
Soundbase.
It's
Oh.
the frequency coordination software. I think you missed it.
Well-
I missed it.
Well,
I was a little late, so.
But even on the software, I could change this pack to whatever Dante audio channel I want and do it on the fly.
What's nice about Soundbase,
That's what that I/O thing was. But
yeah, is you could set up and say like, okay, I want to set up this change, but not have it go just yet, and you could just have it on standby, which is something that's unique to Soundbase. That on Workbench, if you set up a change, it pushes it forward instantly. Soundbase, you could say, I'm going to set up this change to go in 10 minutes. Okay, now I want it to.
so I don't know if that would be very cool if Soundbase could do that with Spectera. I don't know if it's going to do that right out of the gate.
When I took the Soundbase class last year, that was one of the features they were talking about.
And they said that they were specifically going to roll that into Spectera when Spectera is rolled out.
I don't think Sennheiser owned Soundbase at the time, so they
We do.
didn't- Okay. At the time
We do now.
No, at the time that I took that class.
Was that Decibel Dialogues or was it?
695.
So at the time, I don't think they had. We were talking to them, but I don't think we had
They
acquired
never
them yet.
mentioned Sennheiser, so I don't know anything in regards to.
So
Yeah.
Sennheiser has since acquired Showcode, which is the company that makes Soundbase. Donnie and Matt are still running it. They are still the driving force. We're just we allowed them to be full-time Soundbase people as opposed to being RF engineers and Soundbase. And they're like, just to give you an idea of how they're still in control. When we acquired it, we said, well, hey, wouldn't it be great if all Sennheiser gear was able to be managed with the free version? And Matt and Donnie said, that's a horrible idea because that now it's not a level playing field. Why would Shure, Electrosonic, or Wizzycom, or any of those guys want to work with us if people now have to pay to have that functionality that's free with Sennheiser? So Andreas and Danielle Sennheiser said, you're right, let's not do that. And so Sennheiser, it's operated exactly the same way.
Right.
So
Sennheiser is still family owned.
still family owned. And if you guys didn't know this, Neumann is actually part of the Sennheiser family.
What's that again?
Neumann, studio microphones and stuff.
Okay.
They're part of the Neumann family. So when George Neumann was getting close to retiring, he didn't really have family members that wanted to take over Neumann. So the Neumanns and the Sennheisers have been friends for a long time. So he went to the Sennheiser and he said, would you guys be interested in buying this? Because they always kind of had an unwritten agreement that if one of the other companies was in trouble, they would give first right of acquisition to the other company. But part of it was, I want it to be family owned, and Neumann still has to be operated as its own individual company, which they are. They have their own CEO, but they're part of the Sennheiser family. And they've been able to take advantage of like our marketing, our HR, logistics.
Kind of partial to family owned companies.
Yeah. Neumann actually just recently acquired Merging Technologies. I don't know if you guys are aware of them. It's kind of more of for in recording studio stuff, but A to D, some of the best A to D. But anyways, Cascade port, again, that's supposedly going to be coming Q2. Engineer mode, I think that actually is scheduled for the 1st of next year. So again, an engineer, front of house guy could just be flipping through the channels on his own pack into his own ears. So we definitely have a roadmap of stuff coming. But again, this is the first of some cool stuff that we're doing. This will not be the only WMAS product that we come out with. We are going to work on other WMAS stuff. I was mentioning to you, and I could show you guys, we actually have a website, my.sennheiser.com, that you can go on. You could register for it. You will then see you could then say, hey, it would be really cool. Like for instance, it would be cool if the base station had DC power. They will look at it, they'll evaluate it, they will tell you if they accept it. If they don't accept it, they'll tell you why they're not going to put it in. But then you could also kind of see where it might be in the roadmap. And it gives other people in the community the ability to say, we really like that. We're going to vote on it. Because if something is very popular, they might say, well, let's move that up in the priority. So and I could show you that website if you guys want. But let's take a look at the software. So here's the software. This first box up here is your RF coordination or configuration. So I've got my base station. I've got my 2 RF carriers that I could assign. This is what activates it. So this one is actually up and running. It's running 6 megahertz. It's 100 milliwatts. So if I wanted to change the power, I could change it down to 10. It's going to shut down for a second as it's telling the base station and the antennas we're changing power. So technically what's cool about this, if you guys know anything about Broadway, Broadway is a RF nightmare. They're using frequencies that are illegal to use, but there's no RF police, so they don't care. Technically, you could use Spectera and you could coordinate all of Broadway in one 6 megahertz carrier. Because at 10 milliwatts, the RF is probably not going to leave the building. It's not going to increase the noise floor. So you just put more antennas out to make sure you have the coverage for that particular theater. The theater next door could be in the same 6 megahertz, doing 10 milliwatts as well, using as many antennas as they need to get the coverage that they need. The theater across the street could be in the same 6 megahertz channel, running at the same power that they need. Again, if they need zones, if they want to put an antenna in the green room, if they want to have an antenna at the front of the house, because you just coordinate your antennas how you need it, right? So, gives you power there. How you assign antennas. So here's my antennas. I can actually see that the antennas are up and running. I could actually, I don't know if you guys can see, oops. If I hit this little eye, I can see, by the way, I can see the noise floor, and that little thing just showed that there's a little bit of interference. But if I hit this little eye, I can then identify the antenna. So you can see this little LED's blinking. There's an LED on the top and bottom. If you need to identify it, again, you could, I don't know if you saw real quickly, that popped up a frequency that was showing as an interference frequency. If I wanted to, I could turn the LED light off or change brightness. You could also see the temperature. So again, I told you some guys were letting it bake in the sun and it got real hot, so you could see if it's going to be a problem. We do not have the ability, and I think this may be coming in a future update, you could change the power per antenna, I think is something that we're looking at doing. So if you wanted this one to be 10 and that one to be 20 or 30 or whatever, I believe we're looking at doing that as a potential firmware upgrade. But let's say I want to take antenna B and I want to move it to the second RF carrier. That's as easy as that. If I want to use antenna B for a spectrum analyzer, I click on that. It's now a spectrum analyzer. I go to frequency coordination. Here is my frequency scan. Let me scroll this down. So you can see this base station is capable of running from 470 to 608 and the duplex gap. I can see where the 2 RF, I just had an overload because they're probably still a little too close together. I can fix that by simply changing my reference level. Let's see if -10 will work. I can see RF1, which is active, so you can see it there. RF2 is here. It's not active. I can actually show you what it's like to running in a noisy channel, but I could simply pick the center frequency. So for instance, this 503, that's the center frequency. So that channel is 500 to 506. 473 is 470 to 476, right? Just makes it easy to go 503. So that's my frequency coordination. I come back up here. I put that center frequency there, hit enter. Tells the base station that's the frequency you're operating in. So if I wanted to, I will put this back to frequency 1. That's how easy it is to do your frequency coordination and assign your antennas and do all of that. Pretty cool, right?
So if you have an antenna that you switch to frequency coordination, it's no longer a transmit and receive antenna for that time.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, if I go back to frequency scan, my scan is still here. It didn't disappear, but it's telling me that that was the last time the frequency happened, the scan happened. And if you wanted to, for like Soundbase, you could download that frequency scan as an CSV, so you could upload it to whatever frequency coordination software you use. So yeah.
Could you have? I don't see a reason why you wouldn't. You could have an antenna that's just constantly scanning, and then all your other
If I had a third antenna, I've got 2 additional ports. I could plug it in, have it be a constant scanner.
So you don't even need a spectrum analyzer with this system. You just utilize
You do not.
the antenna. Okay.
So, and again, as I mentioned, these use category cable instead of BNC cable. So that's when I said Soundbase developed software where you could literally plug this right into your PC. They have not released it. I don't know when and if they're going to release it, but that's kind of cool. You just have an antenna. There's your very highly detailed RF spectrum analyzer that you already own. And you just plug it into your laptop. It would be nice, but I don't think they're going to do it. Okay, so as I said, I've noticed you can see like the noise floor. Now over here, if you want, you can see that I've got only one power supply plugged in. Enable pairing mode. So when you first get it, you need to pair your packs. Here's something that's really cool. You know how you used to pair packs by doing this? And then if you want to do your firmware updates, all your packs, you had to do that. That no longer is the case with Spectera. You turn the pack on, you put the pack into pairing mode. As long as it's an earshot of the antennas, the base station will see it and it'll ask you if you want to pair that pack. If you have a firmware update, you can over the air update your packs, and it updates them all at the same time because they get their update during their time slots. So if you had 128 packs, which is the maximum number of packs you could have in a time because of the time slots in an RF carrier, you could update all 128 packs in minutes.
When it asks you if you want to update or if you want to assign a frequency, is that on the pack or on the receiver or on?
So, well, here, let's do it.
Receiver, I meant base station.
Here, I'll show you the pairing process. So I'm holding Adam. So let me take him. So this is all your stuff for your packs, right? Now I'm going to unpair this pack, but because I have it set to a link mode and it's getting a Dante channel, I can't just hit unpair. It's a safety feature. So if I got to take it out of its link mode, so that's a very deliberate function. So now I can go unpair, right? Oh, confirm. All right. So this pack is no longer attached to the base station. So if I want to pair it, I press and hold the power button. It is now, I blew it. You got to press and hold it until it turns blue. Hold on, let me do this real quick. Press and hold it until that little LED turns blue. Okay, it's in pairing mode. It's slow flash. It should slow flash. Oh wait, I know why. I go up here. Come on. I go enable pairing. It's blinking, meaning it's looking for a base station. When it fast flashes, it means it found a base station, but I'm activating pairing. So now it's found a base station. So pretty soon this will pop up on here and it'll say, do you want to pair this pack? Right? So, and it has check the pin number. So the pin number is actually on the screen. So I could check and make sure, because if I turn them all on, put them all into pairing, but I'm going to have half in one RF carrier, half in a different RF carrier, or into 2 different base stations. That's one way I can tell, but I'm just going to go pair. It's now paired. It's going to flash green, means it's fast flashing green, means it's pairing to the base station or it's connecting. So now it's up and running. No longer have to hold it, right? And it's actually got a microphone. I'll leave it. So yeah, so firmware, you can save, this is where you could save the settings. So if you set up a production, you could save it. It'll save it as a JSON file. You could load the JSON file. Again, LinkTest does it a little bit better. You could set a walk test. So you could assign one of these packs to do a walk test. So the walk test saves like 6 different telemetry readings, and you could see it over time. It's kind of cool. We are working on the ability to record the production, kind of like you can with Wireless Workbench or whatever, to where with their thing. So you could see if what happened to my RF carrier. Technically, you could do that with one pack utilizing walk test, because the pack still operates as it normally does. It's just recording the information into a JSON file. Unfortunately, it doesn't do the whole production. It doesn't do all the packs. That's coming at a later function. And then over here is your audio interface. So I can see that I'm using Dante. I'm not using Maddie. I'm not using the word clock. And then down here, when we get into the packs, If I want, I can shrink these to give me more room. So it gives me more screen space. So you can still see a lot of your basic information, right? I can still see all the information. I can see which one's where. I can see I'm getting a little bit of interference. And you could do the same thing with the packs. I could do them both. So then you still get your basic telemetry, name of the pack, what RF carrier it's on. It's up and running. I could flash the LED light. I could disable the LED light. I get battery information. This is your interference, your RSSI, your link mode. Steve shows 0 on the link. Oh, that's because I don't have him. I don't have any link modes set, so there's no telemetry on that. So this, because the 3-pin LEMO can be an instrument line or a microphone, the A means it's set up to auto recognize. You can actually program it. I'll expand this. Let's expand Adam. So I can specifically tell it if I want it to be a microphone or an instrument line. If I'm doing an instrument line, if I want to emulate cable, I got a guitarist who wants, I like the impedance of a long cable. You could do that. You can also set your low cut filter, preamp gain for the pack. You could actually have the pack generate a test tone. So if you're doing a walk test or if you just want to listen and see where I'm losing signal. And then again, this is where you set your link mode. So this one is set to raw low latency. I haven't given it a channel, but if I wanted to, I could give it let's give it channel 3. So then I could see that channel 3, Maddie and Dante, or I could, let me just do it channel 1. The other one might be. So now it's set to channel 1. And then I've got my audio feedback if I had a lavalier plugged in, which I could do. Although I don't have anything, it shouldn't show. Test. I thought I did set the link mode, right? Or the channel. Test, test. Yeah. I'll have to figure out why that's not working. I don't have it routed in Dante. But I do have music going through. Now up here, again, here's something that's kind of cool. So when I talk about two-way telemetry, see this little icon for the headphones, how it's red? If I plug headphones in, oh, I'm holding Steve. Let me grab Adam. That's why it's not showing up, because I plugged the microphone into the wrong pack. See how I went from red to blue? So you could see if someone's ears got unplugged. And again, whether I'm using Dante Maddie, the audio channels, I set the link mode. If you've got someone who's deaf in one ear and you want to set the balance, you can set the balance. You could set the volume for them. You could set your minimum and maximum. So again, this is set to where it could go all the way to 0 or mute, or it could go up to plus 27. Again, someone was asking if you could set it for them. So let's say if I wanted it to be 24.5 and I don't want them to be able to change the volume, I could set the minimum and max. So no matter what they do to this, it doesn't do anything, right? I always like a little bit of a range. To be honest, even 0 dB is a little bit hot, but usually like -42 is good for the low. Technically 0 dB on the max is still pretty high. So that gives you all your settings for your packs. And if I wanted to move my packs around, if I wanted Steve to be up top, and actually I put a Z in front of Steve, get rid of it. And the name updates like instantly. All the changes are pretty instant. I will say if I go and I change the link mode, like I could do this on the fly. So again, let's say if you had someone who is normally at a lower link mode, or let's say they were a featured performer, they're done being a featured performer, I could go in and I could change their link mode to a different link mode. There'll be a slight, like a second drop, but it'll come right back. If I go and change their RF carrier, so let's say if I want to move this guy, I've got to take him out of his link modes. I then go, you're going to be on RF carrier 2. And it'll go through, you can see the green lights blinking. So once it goes through and connects, it'll be on RF carrier 2. I don't have RF carrier 2 active. So it's not going to find it, but to activate RF carrier 2, I go like that. RF carrier 2 is now active. Now this will find it, and it'll connect. So I mean, that's how quick it is to move packs between different RF carriers or change link modes. Pretty easy. All built in, all free. No additional hardware or software you have to buy or rent or pay for or anything like that. So, are you guys interested in hearing what it sounds like? Does anyone have any headphones?
Ironically, no.
I do have one pair. So if you guys don't mind sharing, tell you what I'll do. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take and I'm going to put Adam back on RF carrier 1 because that's where I have, let me go link mode. What is Steve set on? I'm just going to have him share. Oh, Steve doesn't have a link mode either. I'll let you guys pass that around. One of the things I do like to do is I like to pause the music, have you guys crank the volume all the way up, because that would show you what the noise floor would be on the system. I won't do that necessarily right now because you guys are passing it around, and I'll let you guys listen to it. But literally the audio quality, if anyone tells me they've heard a better IAM system than this, I'd be amazed. And if you guys want, if you guys want to hang around, I can take the microphone, I could route it from the pack back to the headphones so you could hear kind of the round trip. And we could play with different link modes. If you guys want me to do anything, like as I said, I got RF carrier 2 in a kind of a noisy frequency. I can show you what the system sounds like in a noisy frequency. If you guys want to get up and walk around and see what kind of range we're getting with just these 2 antennas, you're more than welcome to check it out. If you guys want to come up and take a look at the back of the system, you guys are more than welcome to do that. If you guys have a song you know that you want to listen to, I'm more than happy to do it. I'm running Apple Music, so I have access to their entire library. You can walk behind.
I'm noticing like it's centered, but I'm noticing sometimes the different channels are hotter than the other. They're not matching.
Well, it's a stereo.
It's music, Josh.
It's